Hello and welcome to Storybridge. I'm your host, Patti Lucia. I'm an author and teacher, and I'd like to help you use the power of story for personal growth. In this week's episode, my special guest, Mrs. Jones, an erotic coach, and I discuss the ways we can close the gap between our deepest desires and the stories we tell. Hello, everyone. This is Patti, the host of Storybridge. I'm a teacher and an author, and I am always interested in the power of story and how it plays out in our lives. I'm interested in language and words, and that's what we talk a lot about on Storybridge. And in particular, the gap between our truest lives and the stories we tell. So, just a little bit about myself before I introduce my guest this evening. I wrote a book last year. It's called Wildflowers and Present Tenses. And it's stories about coming up and coming out and love and heartbreak and dysfunction, and also my search for meaning and purpose in my life. So that is available, and all my videos and books are available on PattiLuciaWrites.com. That's Patti with an I, LuciaWrites.com. This year I'm working on two projects. So I'm working on the second book, which is Wildflowers and Wooden Spoons, which is a cookbook with stories and recipes from the 10 years that I ran a cafe and my childhood, my Italian upbringing. So a lot of great stories and recipes in that. That's coming out in November. And my other book that I'm working on, which is coming out in January, actually on my birthday, is This Amazing Body. It's my journey into optimal health of mind, body, and spirit in my post-menopausal years. So I challenge, in this book, I challenge a lot of the beliefs, the ideologies that I grew up with, and kind of that I was expected to grow old with. And I've thrown a lot of those to the curb and have rediscovered basically my own beliefs as I move forward based on what my body says to me and what resonates and what is harmonic with my own mind and my own spirit. And a lot of times that takes a good deal of courage to listen to our bodies, listen to ourselves, rather than listen to all of the noise out there and all of the shouldas and couldas and wouldas. So that book is out in January, and it is a book that talks about food, body, sex, diet, weight, all kinds of things. So and that is also available on Patti Lucia Writes. Check it out. I do have an Instagram where I put up these quirky, weird videos about my journey, and that's This Amazing Body on Instagram. So check that out. But I'm really thrilled to have my guest with me this evening for a second time, Mrs. Jones, who is an erotic coach. And I don't want to pretend to be super advanced in my own sexuality and sexual explorations. Actually, part of what excites me about having Mrs. Jones with me on this podcast is she can help me work through some of my shit, because I've got plenty, and I'm determined to work through and to rewrite some of my story that has been held back or repressed, or have, my own delusions. It's like that gap between my deepest desires and the story that I tell. So it's always a thrill to have Mrs. Jones with me. And so, Mrs. Jones, welcome to my podcast. It's really lovely to see you. You look beautiful this
Thank you,
evening.
Patty.
Quite beautiful, as always. So I'm kind of rocking my own kind of sense, my version of my sexiness with the rimless cap. I'm kind of doing the butch thing.
I like it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's
Kind
that's
of
good.
turns me on.
Yeah, you're making me blush already. That's awesome. So why don't you tell my audience a little bit about you and what you do?
Well, I'm an erotic coach. What makes me kind of unique, I have a lot of different certifications that I've worked towards, but nothing is more of a teacher than your own journey. And I think that's one of the things that makes me really unique is that in my own life, I push my edges pretty hard and do put myself out there to try a lot of different things that maybe um, some people wouldn't want to try. And I think that helps me because I have a pretty big toolkit to when different clients come to me with different wants, needs, and desires. A lot of times I've had similar experiences or put myself in situations that I can help guide them so that they feel safe and that they can not make some of the mistakes maybe I've made in the past. And I can just give them a wider perspective. Um, I'm the way I coach is really taking someone where they're at and just helping them take the next step forward in a safe way. My life would probably be a lot for a lot of people. And so I don't just like come in and throw my ideas, philosophies, and lifestyle on them. More of giving a guide, and sometimes I'll say, would you like a different perspective around that? And can I share from my story? And if I feel like they're able to also come from a non-judgmental space and they're open to listening to those new ideas, I will slowly give them different edges to excite them. But what is so fun about coming on here with you is that I get to share my story because, like I said, I don't always. That's not what people come to me for. They're on their own journey and they're wanting safety around that.
Yeah, it's all
Um,
about them.
it is all about them. It is all about them, and I really think that that's what makes a good coach or a guide. You don't want someone that's telling you how to live your life. You want someone that can safely take you where you're at and help you go forward and how
Mhm.
and what you want that to look like,
Mhm.
and give you some guidance around that through their experience.
Mhm. And what are you said you explored all kinds of things and that put a lot of things in your tool belt. Can you which really I in my opinion would make you an awesome coach because whatever direction somebody wants to go in, chances are you have had an experience, you have a story to share, you have some kind of wisdom to glean because wisdom is really about we have this knowledge but when we have these experiences and you put it together and you've got real wisdom, so that is priceless. So what are some of can you talk about some of the things that you've explored that have ended up in your tool belt, that are useful to the folks that you help out?
Yeah, well, a good summary is one, studying the erotic blueprints through Jaya Ma that I studied, and I've been a coach with those blueprints for 5 years. So that's helping people when I go in to touch their body. Through the way their body reacts, I can tell if they are more energetic, more turned on by energy, more sensual. They need a little more foreplay. They like the way things smell and taste, and they're really sensitive to how things are touched. Whether they're sexual and they're like, why are we talking? And why are we not just fucking? Because that's all I want to do. And all I care about is my orgasm. And to someone who's more kinky, and kinky can be anything that is a little bit out of the norm for even that individual. So, kinky could be to the point that a couple has only ever had sex missionary style, and you convince them that maybe they could try doggy style. And they're
Mm,
like, oh, well, I've never thought from going from behind. And
mhm,
to them, that's kinky. So, it's like finding that little bit of an edge and going from there. And then there's someone that just likes it all, and they're like, and that would be me. I'm what you call a shapeshifter.
mm.
I also like came into this planet with a visionary archetype. So I'm very agnodulous. Is that the right?
Um, I think it would be agnostic when it
No, not
comes to
agnostic. Meaning I'm androgynous. So
and
not,
oh, androgynous.
yeah,
Okay.
not completely masculine, not completely feminine, but I can kind of like
Uh-huh.
sway back and forth in between all of it, and kind of blend in with whoever I'm with. And I like it all. So where some people's body would shut down if it's too much for them. I'm like I get it more excited and want to try it
Mm-hmm.
all. And that's
Mm-hmm.
really not for everybody. Um, so as far as like experience with a wide range, I've been in swinger lifestyle for over 11 years. So they tend to be more sexual, and their dynamics and the way they see things. I've been in BDSM for over 5 years. They tend to want to be more sensual or more scene related, more psychological, more
Uh,
pain related,
mm-hmm.
sensory. They
Or like games and fantasies, that kind
Mhm.
of thing.
Yes, playing things out
Mm-hmm.
and both, around them, but they tend not to be have penetrative sex. And then I've been involved in tantric community where they tend to be more energy. I feel you. I want to stare into your eyes. Yoni massage, lingam massage, more from a spiritual standpoint, and they tend to not have penetrative sex. They tend to be more like, I can give you an orgasm from across the room just by
Mm-hmm.
sending my energy to your heart or
Mm-hmm.
to your yoni.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and just being, and that's really fun to work with all those different personalities and energies to giving them what they want and need. But then also when you have two people that are coming from two different places and they can't figure out why they're not relating, and helping them understand what each other needs and then blending that together and letting them know that sometimes you're giving and sometimes you're receiving.
Yeah.
But you have to be aware of it and conscious of it first before you can consciously say, oh, tonight, and not shame the other person. Because if you have an idea about a certain thing that turns them on, you could easily shut a person down just by shaming them instead of being curious
Yeah.
and saying, and that would be coming to a coach. Because I also work with my teacher is, and I have some of the best teachers in the world that work with me, and I choose that too. So it's not just experimenting with people that maybe aren't affluent in these different areas, but I choose too to work with some of the best. And so I have a professional Dom who has been a professional Dom for 27 years who works with me, and he is very fluent in like breath play and knife play and fire play. And those are things that you wouldn't just let somebody do to you. You want to know that they're educated, they know what they're doing, they can't hurt you. That you go into that might seem intimidating, but when you know that someone really knows what they're doing and they're providing something that you are consensual about, you've talked about and created a scene around, you don't feel as scared to go into the situation. So
Right.
that's another reason why to have a coach who knows those people out there that can give those experiences
In
and
a
do it.
in a trusted, safe way.
Hmm.
So let me ask you this. Like, do you think, from your perspective, do you think most people are generally more complex sexually than the path that we've put ourselves on? Like, in other words, like you've got swingers, you've got all of these different I want to say modalities, but they're not. They're paths, sexual paths, or kinds of sexuality, sexual expressions that people have. Um, do do you is do you think that we're all more generally more complex, even if we've picked a something that seems very open or edgy or you know, advanced or all encompassing sexually? Do you think that we're generally more complex than that?
Oh, absolutely. We have all these different energies in our body that we would like to fulfill, and they're part of the reason why we're here to play in those different energies and those different fields. But in certain areas of our life, we've either been shamed or we've had belief systems that hold us back from the different energies where our growth is. So once you learn what the different energies are, then you can start playing with them to say,
Mm-hmm.
how can I feel safe to play with this? So there's nothing that's right. There's, there's in and this is my opinion, there is no right or wrong. There's ways to look at the energy and say, how can I play with this in a safe way for my best learning and growth for myself?
Mm-hmm.
So it can be anywhere from going more inward to expressing ourselves outward, and all the safety and fear that comes around all of that. You can be just as afraid to go inward and be alone as you can to go into a room and let other people see you and express yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't have to be in a sexual way. That could just be, do I go into a room and I dress to hide myself because I don't want people to notice me,
Mm-hmm.
versus wearing a sexy dress because I want people to notice me?
Mm-hmm.
Those are all different ways to play with different energies.
Mm-hmm. So, in speaking of ideologies, and this is something that I've experienced myself. So, we go into these. So you were saying like we kind of like this the stuff that holds us back often are these kinds of hold on, let me just stop getting bringing somebody in. Oh right, admit. Okay,
Welcome,
these.
everybody.
Hey, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. We are already hot and heavy. So jump right in here. So you were talking about the ideologies that kind of hold us back from making these explorations. What about ideologies within these sexual paths? Like, does the swinger lifestyle have its own ideology? The tantric sects have their own ideologies, and is ideology in general? Let's see. I'm just okay. Does ideologies in general kind of hold us back, even the ones within the sexual groups that we belong?
Absolutely. Everybody has different rules. And so I find it fascinating because it really doesn't matter if, whenever you put a group of people together, they start coming up with their own ideas of what they consider right and what they consider wrong. But as a society, what we don't understand is what is going on outside of us is never the main issue that we need to be looking at. What we need to be looking at is what's inside,
Yeah,
because it's our own inner battles and our own inner belief systems that needs to be where we are going first
yeah.
and dictating what needs to come next. And we're that is such a higher level of thinking because we come into this world and we have parents, we have teachers, and they're telling us what to do and they're telling us what to think. So the minute you walk into a group situation, you walk into the same situation.
Hmm.
So a couple will come to me and they might be in the swinger lifestyle, but they're like, but we only play with a couple of people. We're just looking for that right couple that we want to play with. I'm like, well, then why did you invite 20 couples? Well, because we wanted to find that right couple, but we're not going to play with all of them. You know, that would just be wrong. Well, if you're the person that was just in there playing with 10 people, you really kind of feel like shit right now because
Hmm.
you're like, oh, well, I just fucked 10 people, but I guess it's okay that you just want that right couple.
Yeah.
So it's that in every scenario we find a way to shame. Oh, it's okay that we're
Mm.
making this decision, but that decision over there, well, that's just taking it too far.
Well, from your experiences, why do we do that? Why do we go so far in these explorations and then start splitting hairs?
Because we're afraid to look at our own fears. So the couple usually like, and you can tell me this too from your experience, but the
Oh yeah,
couple
I'm going to get to
they
that.
still hold, yeah, they're still trying to hold on to that control of each other, of saying, well, I'm still in control of what you do and you're still in control of what I do. And so the seeing someone that has the absolute freedom to make their own choices is extremely scary and very intimidating for people. And it
Hmm.
comes to a very high level of really confidence in yourself. And you really have to come to an understanding that you want this other person to have the ultimate, like if you're in a partnership or if you are in a room with other people, you want everyone to actually live their life to the fullest. That's what I want anyway. I want them to live their life to the fullest, and I want them to have everything that they possibly could want, and I don't want to be in the way of that.
Hmm.
And I don't want to be the person that made them feel bad for whatever choice they just made.
Hmm.
But I can't, I have to say that I had to grow to that part. But I had to go and see what, when I was trying to control the other, I was having to look into why. And it was my fear that they would leave. And there really are no guarantees.
Right.
So when we start like releasing our own fears, which once again is going, and what is that fear? But we don't want to look inside.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that that is such a huge thing, Ms. Jones. And you know what? I think it just has gotten steadily worse. Like in the gay community, there is so much now about how you can't tell some like there are people in the gay community who want to tell you who you should be attracted to, because if you don't say you're attracted to them, then you're hurting their feelings, and that's wrong, and so you're shamed for not being attracted to someone. Like, so for instance, I don't, honestly, I don't know how to define myself these days, and it's almost like I don't know if I fucking want to, but like, so just a few days ago, I got together with a guy, and that was pleasant, that was fun, but all the while I'm saying I really want to find a woman to get into a relationship with, and it hasn't happened. But men are kind of coming out of the woodwork. What do you do, right? But in the gay community, they're like we're told that like, so for instance, if I'm bi but I'm not attracted to a trans woman who has a penis, I'm not. I mean, if I want to sleep with somebody with a penis, I'll sleep with a guy. But when I'm sleeping with a woman, I want pussy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want a pussy, I don't want a penis. So, and I like to be able to choose. And so we've gotten to this point in the gay community where there are actually voices in the gay community who are saying, you're a this phobic and a that phobic and a thisist or whatever, all kinds of names. If you're not, if you generally aren't attracted to, so it's gotten to this point where the ideologies and the politics are encroaching and shaming people about who we are and aren't attracted to. So you have all of that noise going on the outside, and but the most important stuff is you're figuring out your own navigation, what you really want, what you really desire. But there's just that the outside noise seems to be getting louder, at least for some folks. So
Yeah, and I guess I go back, I grew up extremely religious and going to church, and I just don't see a difference in that than sitting in church on Sunday and someone else telling me what I was supposed to think and believe. And um,
exactly.
like when do we stop doing that? When do we stop
Hmm.
telling each other, well, you're not accepted if you don't think this way or believe this way?
Right.
And for ourselves too, um, I gave up labels a couple years back. I did this. It was a demonstration where I made my own bow and arrow, and the it represented the different chakra systems, and then we put on what we were shooting at, what we wanted to give up, and I wanted to give up labels, because like I was being tired of being put in all these, oh, you're a mom or you're a wife or or you're this or you're that, and I was like, in fact, I think on a daily basis I'm still trying to figure out who I am or what I want. Like I think I was out on a lake the other day and I was like, what do I want right now? Like what is my step right now? But it still goes back into learning to accept self instead of taking from the external world who we are. Um, I recently was working on a diversity course, and they were all into labels, wanting what is your pronoun,
Yeah.
how do you label yourself?
Yeah.
And all of those ideas came up, and I actually really got in conflict
Mm.
with the the instructor because I really pushed back, and I was like, you know, where they thought they were being nice by um, a story was told where the other person went away without having a conversation about they weren't into the other person what the other person was into, but they just left them. And that is my biggest problem with society is we don't know how to have those harder conversations.
Hmm.
And I said, that's not compassion, that's abandonment.
Right.
Abandonment is when, okay, I don't agree with what you're doing, so I'm going to just desert you and leave you and let you sit in that.
Hmm.
That is shame, and
Hmm.
that hurts.
So they were
Where
taught, they were giving this story in the context of where did the pronouns come in this story, or did they?
it was a trans story,
Mm.
but the trans person was more into kink,
Mm.
and the other one wasn't, and so they just left them in the kink
Hmm.
of the story. And I won't go into all of what it
Yeah.
was, but I was like, having compassion for another person would be to stay there and say, that's not really my thing,
Hmm.
but I'm willing to hold space for you and know that there's nothing wrong with
Hmm.
with it, but it's just not for me.
Hmm.
And having the balls to say that and the guts to be in that hard conversation is really lacking
Hmm.
right now in our world.
I agree.
We would rather like shame somebody and not have the conversation and walk away and avoid it
Hmm.
and actually be there and say, I'm holding compassion and love for you, but I'm not feeling that.
Hmm.
And, and I think that that is my problem in some of these communities is we're more apt to look at another person and think that's not for me and make them feel bad than having a conversation around that and saying, I'm in acceptance of you, of who you are as a human being with choice. And I love you in that, and I see you and I hear you.
Hmm. Hmm. Right. And I think so much of it goes back to what you were talking about earlier about going inward. Like, we can't always be looking outwards for people to validate who we are. You know what I mean? And we've got that's so much of an inward journey. And I think so much of like there are whole ideologies that are created around making people feel good about themselves. And that's I don't mean to sound crass or cruel, but that's not my job. I do think that compassion is important, And honesty is important, but it's really not my job to make someone feel good in the world. That's nobody's responsible for me making, for me feeling good about myself or validating myself. I've got to do that. I've got to, and so much of that is going inward, doing that self exploration and self acceptance and self love and self nurturing.
Yeah, and having the skills for that, because no matter how many people are even, coming on and listening to this podcast, we have no idea what their upbringing was or what their
Mm-hmm.
ideas are or where their belief systems are.
Mm-hmm.
So by teaching acceptance and curiosity is the best thing that we can teach, because we can tell this story, it will be interpreted 100 different ways,
Right.
or even 1,000 different ways, because we're all interpreting from ourselves.
Yeah.
So the only person that we can change is ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's
And
really.
it really doesn't even matter how open the other person is.
Mm-hmm.
They can be the most open person in the world, but I've really found a lot of times that when I say something, I ask to be repeated back. How did you interpret that? How did you understand that? And I'm sometimes just blown away. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't mean it that way. And and I'm like, wow, the way you're saying it, I come across as a really horrible person. And I don't, I was like, I didn't mean it that way. Can we like take a step back? And that is something I guess I just learned even in the last year,
Mm.
because I feel like I'm very honest and open and I speak my truth, but the way it's interpreted is a completely different scenario. And so I've really learned to be like, how where's that speaking to you in your body? And how
Mm-hmm.
are you reacting to that? And then hearing their story come back to me.
This just reminds me of like something that I wanted to ask you. So you've been a coach for a while, and you've been coaching during the pandemic. And I really think like this whole lockdown, the pandemic, all of the experiences that people have had in the last year and a half have had a really big impact on their psyche, right? On their mental health, on our sexuality, on our sexual expression, and how how have you experienced that in your work? What have you observed in your work with people? Would you say that that's true in your line of work? That this has had a really big impact on people, the pandemic?
Well, the pandemic is just another place for us to learn and to see how we reacted to it from our situation.
Mm.
And so look at, is it bringing up depression? So is that from loneliness? Is that from not getting enough human touch? Is that from not getting enough human reaction? And start writing those things down and then say, what is it that I need and how can I create that?
Mm-hmm.
So everything that we experience in life is there for us to take that experience and see how we can come from a better place. And anytime you have a choice whether you're going to be a victim
Mm-hmm.
or you're going to take it as an opportunity for growth,
Right.
where we came here for growth,
Mm-hmm.
but we also have free will.
Mm-hmm.
So in that free will, we can say, I'm feeling really depressed. I need other human touch. I'm in a pandemic. What is it I can do to create that for myself? I know for me, being on a all day Zoom call is not something I'm going to do right now. I need to be in a room with other people and feeling energy. And I could handle it at the first of the pandemic. I thought it was kind of neat being in my own space and being in course. And now I'm a no. I'm just like, I'm a no.
Mm-hmm.
I'll come back when we're all together again. because that's something that I need. So I would rather be about my day and getting to share that energy than being in a room where I'm in front of a computer.
Mhm.
It doesn't do it for me, and I end up getting depressed.
Yeah. Well, I certainly have witnessed that teaching and seeing how many of my students were complaining of being depressed. I mean, they weren't even hiding it anymore. I mean, you could just look at the screen and say, yep, she's depressed, she's depressed, she's depressed, he's depressed. You know, you could literally see it. It was just so obvious. So yeah, I would agree with that. I work with teenagers, and you could really see it was obvious.
Yeah, I can imagine that was really difficult to watch.
So, but anyway, moving on to more stories, I guess. Um, I wanted to. Um, well, there were things that I talked about that we would talk about, and about how often we delude ourselves, and I know I have been guilty of deluding myself about how open I was sexually, how free I was sexually, because I had, from a young age, I had kind of chosen an alternative lifestyle. So I thought that because I had made that brave choice, that I had freed myself of the shame and the guilt of, you know, growing up in a religious household, um, and all of the judgment. I thought that because I moved out of my house where I was seen as an abomination, that I would kind of free myself of those kinds of self judgments. And uh, I was wrong, and have kind of struggled over the years with, you know, my own self acceptance about my sexuality. And I found that when I first came out, I identified as a lesbian, but I kind of was a fuck up when it came to being a lesbian, because I also dated men. And that was like a big no no. So I was kind of doing it all wrong, and the weight of the judgment from other lesbians was very. So you know, I felt a lot of shame early on too, when I came out. So I've kind of gone through the years experiencing that, experiencing you know, the constraints of even being in the gay community. I think it's gotten worse, but when it came to sex, the way it looked for me was, I thought, you know, that um, I was into presenting myself as someone who was a great lover. I was Italian. I kind of had a strut, you know. I kind of strutted my stuff, you know, and I presented myself as a good lover. What that meant, though, over the years, was that I was more identified with like kind of male performance, and then constrained by that. But I had these other desires that I was reticent to express, you know, so I wouldn't really express those desires to a partner. I kind of settled into, and you do see this a lot in relationships, but I settled into kind of a role, you know, that I played, but ultimately was not fulfilled
Hmm.
in that role, but didn't have the skills to communicate that, because there was a shame associated with my desire, my desire to be other than the role that I was playing.
So,
Yeah.
what were some of those desires?
Um, I did not want to be the, I didn't want to be the top, I wanted to be taken. I wanted someone to throw me around, throw me around, have your way with me. Um, I was really, really conflicted about penetration, because I thought, did that mean was that did that mean something, about like my lesbian stat, did that call into question my lesbian status? There was this whole thing about penetrate to be penetrated or not to be penetrated. There's this whole thing in the lesbian community, and the thing is that I wanted that, but what I found was it was more comfortable for me to just date men in between my relationships with women. It's like, okay, that's where I'll get that. Yeah,
What do you want now?
I want it all. I want it all. I I like some aspects of being in a relationship with a woman, though I haven't been in a relationship with a woman for quite a while. Um, and I like the ease of, being with men, even though sometimes I do find it boring, or, like sometimes and I don't mean that against men. I just mean, um, I'm like a real conversationalist, so I really like, and sometimes I find that like men don't like to talk as much as I like to talk, or sometimes the things that they want to talk about, I'm like, you know. So that's been a little challenging, but the sex has been okay. Like I've had relations with men. Like I said, I just got together with this guy I know just a few days ago, and it's good. And I feel like when I was with him, like I thought about some of the stuff that we've talked about. So I thought I'd try some stuff. So I'm like, so what are your fantasies? What are your fantasies? And he turns out to be like a lot more conventional than I thought. Like he just kind of likes what we do. It's like, well, I like penetration. I was like, okay, it's kind of a no-brainer. Um, but he didn't really want to explore other things. And I would have been open to kind of like playing around, with a fantasy if that's what he wanted to do. Now that's not a conversation. I I don't think I've ever really been comfortable with a woman having a conversation like that. So I find that I've been a little more comfortable with men, and I don't know if it's because I'm less emotionally invested. You know what I mean? Like, I'm thinking this is really about pleasure. It's not about being in a relationship. That I'm more open to kind of taking those kind of risks. I'm not sure, but these are things that I've been exploring in the last year or so.
So, when you meet somebody and you start having time with them, do you shut yourself out to the rest of the world? What kind of thoughts go through your head?
When I meet a man,
When you meet anybody and you start like hanging out with them, do you hold yourself open to meet other people too?
with women, I tend to get like really focused, and I start writing a story in my head, and it's more of a romantic story. Like I start picturing us like, is this possible that maybe one day we could like be in a little house and I could be making like I have these little, these little stories, these little fantasies that start, especially if we've had some really nice conversations and things seem to be clicking. I think, wow, this is kind of where I go. And so then I shut other possibilities out. With men, not so much. I think that was a really good experience. That's kind of cool, but I really like him. So I think, I'm going to be open to having the experiences I can have with him. So I tend to be more fluid with men. It's kind of like, well, that I had that kind of experience with him and that was nice. And I know that, he's going to give me a different kind of experience. And I'd like to explore that. I'd like to have fun with him too.
Mhm.
So, but not
When it
really with,
comes to someone you think that you would like, the idea in your head of your ultimate partner or long-term mate, you go into story and start making up things and block out other possibilities.
yeah, yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. And then, yeah, and I think that that also blocks out other sexual possibilities. And then there's been, when you talk about judgment and everything, like in different communities, well, in the community of, women seeking women community, right? Um, there's often this kind of language in profiles, online profiles that are like no couples, no buys. And I'm like, damn, I feel like
No
I just got
chance.
no trans. I feel like I just was scolded. I mean, like, look, I'm not really going to be attracted to a trans, but I'm not going to put that in my profile in all caps. No trans. No this, no that. It's like, wow, that's harsh.
I'm going to push you there. How do you
Yeah.
know you wouldn't be attracted to a trans? Is that an
Well,
idea or
I
is
don't
that
think it's so much the physicality as it's the ideology. I think there's a lot of ideology that comes along with that. And a lot of what my experience is that sometimes trans people are kind of overly sensitive about things. And I'm like harsh. I'm gonna like, look, I'm not gonna hold back. If you're my partner, I'm gonna be honest and truthful with you. And so it's not like I'm going to be cruel, but I'm going to be honest. And I would need to be with a partner who could hang like that. Do you know what I mean? Who's not going to be like, you said that, that, it's like, oh yeah, that's Patty. That's her. She's opinionated. So I think that would be my biggest concern. Isn't so much the physicality as the other stuff that sometimes comes with it.
so a different perspective would you like?
Yeah, I'd love a different perspective. Let's do this.
So kind of what you described, it wouldn't matter. I see it in all individuals when we have an idea of that certain relationship and we live in a society that really has instructed us that one other individual could fulfill all of our needs.
Yeah.
And there's so many different, we're here for growth, right?
Hmm.
And there's so many different energies. And so playing with those different energies can create a lot of different relationships. And it's very, I believe, cruel to expect another person to fulfill all of those needs and desires. So I have many relationships. I have many relationships with women, and I have many relationships with men. I don't, I guess if I was going to label myself, I would be pansexual,
Hmm.
um, because like, I'm attracted to the human, but I'm also looking at what energy they're bringing in that helps me in that energy. Um, so the individual that maybe the sex was really great, but intellectually the conversation wasn't so good. What if you could have that relationship and just have the best sex of your life and you don't have to have that conversation?
Right. It doesn't have to be everything. Right.
Yeah, and then you have another individual that you have the most deep, intimate conversations you've ever had, and that they can go on for hours and hours. And, the sex is good, but it's not like the one that you're not going to have the best conversation with.
Hmm. Yeah.
And when we open ourselves up to like those possibilities and those ideas, we stop making every time we go out on our first date that story of, oh, Oh, they use their credit card. Does that mean they're in debt?
Mm.
Why didn't they pay cash? I wonder if I would have to have a separate account with this person. You know? Oh, should I already go through their phone? Or I've even seen it at sexuality events that I go to, and this is really makes me laugh. Is humans are so good at being human. Is you're going to be there for what, 5 or 7 days, and they go back. So you'll have the couple, and then you'll have the individuals, and the couple will be like, "We're only going to be each other's partner." Okay, you're only going to be each other's partner. Well, two individuals go hook up the night that night, and I'm like, okay, so you're in two situations that are going to arise at this point. It really sucked, and I got to be around this person for the next 5 days, and that's uncomfortable. Or now we're a couple. Are we only going to couple together? Or are we going to be other people's partners? And it's all those belief systems that when we look at it and go, where did that come from? Because we had an intimate moment. I've already planned my life, my children, my finances, and my retirement with you. And all we did was have a beer. And
Right.
so when we can open that up and go, Patti, you and I go out on a date. And I'm like, Patti, that was such a stimulating conversation. I had the best time with you. I want to see you again.
I'd be
And
like, yeah, sure,
yeah, can we start working on that together?
sure.
And then as time goes on, and consenting and saying, Patti, I'm feeling a little bit more,
Hmm.
but I'm going to come from a place of this is kind of how I see our relationship going. How do you see our relationship going? And are you able to disconnect? Because, hey, say you meet me, we go out on a date, and you're like, wow, I could really see myself being with this person for the rest of my life. And then we would have to have a conversation. I'd be like, Patti,
Hmm.
that would be great. And I would love to have a long term relationship with you, but I also have a relationship with 4 other people, and I don't plan on them leaving my life. How do you
Hmm.
feel about that?
Hmm. Hmm.
So the more we can go into those conversations and be a little bit honest and also let the other person off the hook,
Yeah.
that is, along with coming from compassion and empathy, that's how our world is going to grow into love.
Hmm.
Because instead we all walk out and we go on that first date or that first, I don't know, what are these internet things that everybody's meeting each other on, and they're swiping, and based on a physical attraction they're going and meeting a person for a drink, and because they had a good conversation they've already planned their whole entire life.
Yeah. Yeah.
About how about like for the
On a
next few
Tinder.
weeks we just have a fun time
Hmm.
and see where that goes.
Hmm.
Can we
Hmm.
do that? And you don't even have to put sex in there, because if you not are not emotionally ready to separate sex from love and sex from relationship, then you probably shouldn't be having it.
Hmm.
And that's from a sex coach. Because if you're not ready to have those consensual conversations and be able to separate it, and even in all these groups that we're talking about, if they're not emotionally doing the work, and they're not looking into where those different things are coming from inside, that's where they're going to hit their stumbling blocks. Now, they need to hit the stumbling blocks because that's how they're going to grow. But don't take your stumbling blocks out on me.
Right.
Your ideas, your thing, that because I'm a woman, and if I label myself as a lesbian, I'm not allowed to have penetrative sex. That's not my stuff. That's your stuff.
Hmm.
That's your own biasness that maybe you don't like dick.
Hmm.
So go home and look at that.
Hmm.
And I think that as a society, once we kind of grow to that place of doing the pushback and say, I appreciate you, I hear you, but your ideas are different than mine.
Right.
Can we choose to think differently from each other and still be
Mm-hmm.
friends. Now, unfortunately, we live in a world where that's not possible. Some people are not ready for that growth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
But what I have found in being affluent in all these different communities, in every community, I also find the people that come from love. And that is in the gay community, and that's in the trans community, and that's in the BDSM community, and that's in all communities, and that's even in church. People who come from a place of acceptance and love is what we need more of in the world. And the rest of us need to go inside and figure out where the fuck is going wrong in here, because it's
Mm-hmm.
not out there.
Yeah.
If I'm jealous, if I am not doing well in a relationship, if I'm writing, if I'm making another person miserable, it's because of my own hatred of myself. And once I can learn to love myself, then the outside world isn't going to influence me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can find my true authentic self and come from that place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's coming from love.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's definite. That's a journey that I'm on, and I've been on a while. I have a ways to go, but that is really kind of where I'm headed. So it's so good to hear you to say that.
Yeah, tell them to go fuck themselves.
Yeah.
Because they probably are, because who would want to fuck them anyway? I don't.
Yeah, no, but I'm, so I'm kind of exploring. I'm on this particular journey, and I think that it's just taking me in unusual places, and then I just have to process that. It's like, wow, here I am. What does that mean? So um and I think that it comes down to also dealing with our own judgments. Like, what are my judgments about where I'm at right now? I mean, why is this so bad? This actually isn't, what would I like more of? How do I get that? So, um,
And you
go
get
ahead.
it by putting yourself in uncomfortable situations and
Yeah.
being honest.
Yeah.
I mean, when you start to be honest with people, and say things that you would normally, if you're wanting to hide it, practice saying it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then be like, well, that was fun. Turn everything into a game. I mean, I think that's why I'm expanding so quickly right now, is because to me, it's all an illusion. And I know it's all my own stuff. So I've quit
Mhm.
looking outward. I'm looking inward. And then I'm
Yeah.
like, "Ooh, how could I play with this? Even when it feels bad, even when it hurts."
Mm.
I had a huge trigger this last week, and I went back to, it was around betrayal. And I went back and realized, like, I remembered back when I was in junior high, I was an eighth grader, and my best friend was always liked by all the boys. Like, they they really let me know they liked her more than me.
Mm.
And there was a seventh grade boy that I liked, and which was kind of shameful in that, because as an eighth grader, we're not supposed to like younger boys, right? And so I told my friend, I was like, I like that boy. And I went to the bathroom and I came back and they were slow dancing.
Hmm.
And I was like, you could have danced with any guy here. You danced with that boy.
Hmm.
And then I went on vacation the next day and I came back and found out they'd seen each other every day that I was gone. And I was
Wow.
like, how could you do that? And she was like, well, he was a dick anyway. So I saved you from learning that, because he was a
Wow.
real jerk. And I'm like,
Yeah,
and
thanks.
so that betrayal went all the way back to that. I tried to go earlier than that, but that was like a really deep betrayal. And then I started thinking about other little times when I thought my friends had kind of went around me, or someone I cared about had went around me. Then I had to look at when I had done it to other people.
Oh.
And I was like, oh. This is a human animal thing. This is an instinctual thing that we all do to each other. Can I forgive others? Can I forgive myself?
Mhm.
And through working through that process and then through able to communicate with the other people involved who actually did nothing, I was completely making up a story in my head. But I refuse to hold it in. I'm not going to push it down anymore
Mhm.
because there is a safe way to have the conversation with others around us. And that's why you get a coach, or that's why you learn those skills so that you can start being more authentic and honest.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, Patty, when you go meet those women, you don't put them at a different level. You can
Yeah.
say, oh, this is going to suck and this is going to be hard, but I'm going to tell you exactly what I want. I want you to fucking take me.
Mhm.
And if you're not the woman that can do that, I might need to have more than you because I also need that in my life too.
Right.
I love what we have together. I'm willing to work on that with you. But if you can't provide that for me, let's see how else we can also get it.
Yeah.
Because who in this world should go without what they want and need? And how did that make you feel all those years that you were not getting what you wanted?
I think that I rationalized it by thinking, well, I've gotten what I deserve. I don't know, maybe I just don't deserve more than this. Or, those kinds of things that have to do with self-worth, like it would be selfish to ask for more because I get this, and this from this relationship. So why would I ask for more, or why would I expect more?
I totally get that. And that goes into our definition of self and going in and looking at that. I've also went through that lately with defining what does it mean to be a wife,
Mm,
you know, and having all these different ideas and then understanding that there are areas that we cannot grow each other. There are areas that we're not willing to provide for each other. It's not in our character, it's not in our personalities. But as a society, we define what a relationship is supposed to be like. And whenever you step out of that norm, you that's where your battle is. We think
mhm.
you have to go to war to fight, but you don't. But the problem is when we're not going to war with self and we're not growing, we're dying.
Yeah.
We can literally be alive and be dying. And I see a lot of that going on around me. And I just and sometimes Patty, it would probably be easier to conform, you know, than
Yes.
face the fears and face the things that are difficult.
Yeah, but folks like you and I, we're not here for the easy.
No. So I
Fuck
slapped
that.
myself on the face that day and I was like, remember why you're here. You're gonna go on and talk to Patty.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. We're not
You're
here
gonna
for
share
the
yourself with the world so other people can wake up.
um all right. So, Ms. Jones, what else? Have we covered everything that we had wanted to talk about? I want to make sure we don't miss anything this evening. We covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we always do.
We did. If you're listening, you missed before we went live. Before we went live, Ms. Jones and I were having a moment. She was kind of making me blush. You want to tell him? Want to tell him what you were doing, Ms. Jones? It
tell,
doesn't take
tell,
much to make me blush, but
tell them about your how you wanted to come across today, and then I'll tell you.
oh yeah. All right. So listen, if you saw our last live stream, I had a different background, and of course, but I decided I was just kind of feeling that I wanted to kind of do my version of sexy. And so I was feeling a little bit on the butch side today. So I wore the brimless hat. And, I've got my little my coffee house cafe thing in the background. So I wanted to look like I was, chilling, in a coffee house, kind of a hip lesbian kind of thing going on. I was sharing that with Mrs. Jones as we came in. I was kind of doing my soft butch kind of thing.
And I asked her if she wanted me to go get my strap on to wear.
And I said, yes, yes, I do.
And then
Yes,
I
please.
proceeded to tell her that when I wore it and dressed like a guy, I really enjoyed the fact that I could like lift my strap on up and I could put it in my mouth. And so
Yeah.
I asked this other guy that was filming me if he could do what I could do. And he was like, yeah, no.
No.
And I was like, look, instantly hard.
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of comes that way. So I think it would be really sexy to see you dressed like a guy. I would love to see you in a tie.
Well, maybe next time.
Next time. Oh yeah, no, that'd
I'll
be
come in
awesome.
my masculine
You could come in the masculine and
with my
just
strap on
with your
or my package.
you're gonna come packing.
I'm gonna
You're gonna
come
be
packing.
packing. I just, maybe I'll end on this story. I do have a packing story.
Do
Want to
you?
hear my packing story? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was the one packing, but this kind of just shows you, kind of where I was at the time. So I was living in New York City. And by the way, I lived kind of a polyamorous life in New York City. So I dated different people and whatever. And it was kind of, I was like a political activist. So in the political activist community, that was kind of what was expected is, you lived more of a polyamorous life. So I did. But there was a woman that I knew at the time who invited me. She said, Patty, I want to take you to a private club. And it was in New York City. It was downtown. It was in the Village. She said, but it's not a club that has a sign outside the door or anything. It's a really, really private club. And she got my curiosity. I was like, well, what kind of club is it? And
The
she
kind
said,
of club we gotta go to.
and she said, well, it's a women's club, but the thing about this club is all the butches come packing. So you have your butches who are packing and you have your femmes. And she said, so, and I was like, well, I wouldn't. She said, I know, I'll be packing. You can come with me. And I was like, oh, well, okay. And there was something about the idea that was really attractive to me. Like I wanted to go, but I never got up the courage to go with her to that club. So I never went to the club. But I was intrigued. But in the end, I decided I didn't want to go. I was just kind of chicken.
That is the funnest part of being a coach and a guide is helping people find those things that they're a little bit chicken about
Yeah.
and then giving them permission and seeing where how much they grow from getting to able to express that.
Yeah.
There is nothing funner to me in life than seeing that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's got to be
When
that.
someone's like, I kind of want to do this.
I know, and they'll say it in a whisper, right?
Yeah,
I kind of want to do that.
let's do it.
I dated a woman. I found out, she was into S&M and I didn't know it. And she kind of somewhat explained it to me, a little bit. It was really interesting because I was living in Boston at the time and she lived in a museum. She lived on the top floor of a museum. It was a car museum. It was an automobile museum. She lived on the top floor. So where she lived was the most awesome place. And in the place that she lived, and she rode a motorcycle, it's like, what's not hot about that, right? So there were
Oh,
all kinds
cool.
of things that were really cool and really hot, and I was attracted. But she was definitely into S&M, and I was still really young and really kind of just chicken shit. About a lot of things, but she showed me the things in her room and everything. I went on a couple dates with her, but I didn't want to continue because I knew that was the experience she was looking for. And I was I was kind of intimidated by it. Like I really didn't know if it was something I wanted to explore. I had a lot of internal judgments about it, and I'm not sure if that's something even now that I would explore, but I don't have the same like, oh, kind of feeling.
Well, I will tell you that. I mean, when BDSM was introduced to me, I was like, y'all are crazy. I'm like, I'll be over here in the corner watching, so just if you can explore something and and feel safe,
Hmm.
you don't know what you don't know.
That's
So
true.
I would encourage you in a safe way to figure out ways that you you don't you always can say no.
Right.
But if you
Right.
go in with a little bit of curiosity and then you're like, oh,
Well,
I,
I'm curious about a lot of things.
well, me too. But at first I was like, I wasn't gonna do that. I mean, the first time a woman ever kissed me, I think I was 39 years old. I was at a strip club and she kissed up my chest and I was like, what? It's that coming to a place of curiosity and going, how can I play with this in a safe way?
Yeah.
You don't have to go in and go, tie me up and use those
Yeah.
knives on me. And why don't you just flog me while you're at it? And with
Yeah.
no, I definitely have DOMs that
Hmm.
have tried to find me on different sites. And they're like, I'm like, well, what makes you a Dom? And they're like, well, if you come here, I'm going to put you in a cage all weekend. I'm like, and that works? Like, who's going to do that? I'm
Mm.
like, no, like there's conversation, there's contracts, there's
Yeah.
eating, there's feeling safe, there's doing it in a safe place. Don't go to someone's
Hmm.
house. I never meet anybody without having their driver's license.
Hmm.
So I think I would put that out there for everybody. I don't meet anyone without them sending me their driver's license. They can like mark out things that they think I could use against them, but as far as someone always knows who I'm with and where I'm at.
Hmm.
Those are just safe ways to put yourself, but also setting yourself up so that you can go and be curious.
Yeah.
Be like, oh, what's this experience going to bring?
Hmm.
Most of the time, they're going to chicken out and they're not going to show up or they're not going to give me their driver's license. So,
I think that you've touched on something that I would love to explore a little bit more the next time we talk, and
okay.
that's about safety. It's about exploring freely and safely, and really all of what that's about, because I know we talk about it, but there are all kinds of techniques and strategies that most of us have no idea about.
Mhm.
And so I think that would be, we can include that in our next conversation. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't know about the driver's license thing, so I'm sure there's a lot more where that came from.
Oh yeah, that is a fun conversation because I've had people try all different things. They'll be like, "Oh, well, my wife can't come because our mother-in-law came to, or my mother-in-law came to town, but I can still come." I'm like, "Oh yeah, put your wife on the phone."
Mm, mm-hmm,
Or they'll send me a video that I can tell that was made for somebody else, and I'll be like, "Yeah, that wasn't made for me."
mm-hmm.
And people will try all kinds of different ways to meet you or get to you, and it's really important to be safe.
Awesome. Well, we can talk about that next time we get together, because that really sounds like that's important. I would love to hear those stories too. All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up. Ms. Jones, can you share with our listeners how people can get a hold of you if they would like your services?
Usually the link to the my website is usually with this video.
Okay.
So, or they can contact you and you can put them in contact with me.
Awesome. So the link to Ms. Jones will be in the comment section below this video. And you can reach me at pattyluciawrites.com if you're interested in any of my books and or videos any of the things that are going on with me. I want to thank everyone for listening in, whether you're listening in live or whether you are listening sometime in the future. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Jones. Always a pleasure. This has
Always fun.
been so much fun. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you, in a tie. Definitely.
Okay. All right. I'm
Yeah.
working
Do
on
you
my.
have a do you have a fedora? Do you have a fedora or anything like that? Or do you just do the
It's
tie?
something I've wanted to do, and now you're just pushing me now to make it happen.
Awesome. I think you'd look awesome in a fedora
Yeah.
with a tie, that whole look.
I mean, it was. I actually, recently, talking about my friend who was trans. They were talking about, having a strap on, and so I got both of us one, and we were sword fighting. We were chasing each other around the room, and we just had the most fun. So, and it was the next day I went to the tantric retreat and I dressed like a man, and that's when I was having so much fun with that. But
Did you
my push
pack?
is,
Did you
huh?
pack at the tantric?
I wore the strap on.
Oh, that's awesome.
I wore the strap on, so
At
I was
the
proud.
tantric retreat.
Yeah, I had my other roommates was a couple, so I asked to borrow his clothes, and he had so much fun dressing me. He put like a black ball cap on me, and he gave me the shorts that were loose, which the strap on was like fumbling around.
Dangling, yeah,
And I was having
flying
to push it
around.
out of the way, and I showed up, and everybody was just like, "Oh, okay, this is what you're doing today." And I was like, "Yep, this is what I'm doing today." But I loved it. I loved playing with the energy of it, and I was like, I'd really like to take this out into the world a little bit, and pull out a little bit more on my masculine side, and
Yeah,
just
that's
play with
awesome.
how that feels with being out in the world. So
Yeah.
you're helping me make that a reality, and
Well, good.
which is just a great example of being curious and pushing an edge and like playing with energy and making it fun.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
just
Oh,
make life fun.
you know what?
Enjoyable.
We need more of that. We need more of that. We need more fun. We need more pleasure. We need more laughter. We need more stories. And that's why you and I do what we do.
Yep.
And it's so delightful to do what we do together. So,
Now that what's coming to my mind is I think I might have to go watch that flash dance video, when she's dressed like a man and she's doing that shadow walk.
oh yeah. Well, you've got, we haven't set a date for when we're going to get together, but you've got a little time. Do
Okay.
some
Okay.
research and whatever. And I don't know, I'll work on my look too. I kind of like what I'm rocking today, but you never know. What
Show up however you want to show up, and I'll love
yeah.
and accept you.
That's awesome.
I'm not
Miss
going to tell you you have to be a certain way at all. You just get to be you.
I love it. And you too. This has been so much fun, Mrs. Jones. Always so much fun. And I look forward to our next conversation and the stories we'll tell next time. And until then, I hope you enjoy every minute of what you do. If you are interested in writing your own story and need help, sign up for a free writing consultation at PattiLuciaWrites.com. Thanks for listening.